Welcome, and thank you for being here. Today's Respect Perspective is called The Human Element. This presentation is about more than pricing, business models, or economic pressure. It is about what happens when the human side of business is pushed too far into the background. Because when integrity, value, and customer respect are treated as secondary to growth and margin, the consequences do not stay on spreadsheets. They show up in people's lives. Over time, business priorities shifted. There was a move away from serving people ethically, creating real value in products and services, and building trust through action and integrity. In its place, many organizations became increasingly focused on scaling revenue growth, maximizing extraction, and optimizing margin. And the important thing here is that this was not sudden. It was gradual, and in many ways intentional. The systems, incentives, and strategies were redesigned to reward financial performance first. And over time, that changed how organizations behave, how they sell, and how they relate to the people they depend on. To understand why this matters, we have to start with economic reality. Across North America, the last 5 years have fundamentally altered the consumer experience. From 2020 to 2025, cumulative inflation in Canada is estimated at roughly 18 to 22%. In the United States, it is roughly 17 to 20%. At the same time, average wage growth over that same period has only been around 12 to 15%. So while wages may appear higher on paper, they have not kept pace with inflation. That creates a real wage gap of approximately 5 to 8%. And that gap matters, because on top of that, housing costs in many regions have surged by 30 to 50% or more, while grocery prices have increased by over 20% since 2020. So the pressure people feel is not imagined. It is measurable. People may be earning more nominally, but in practical terms, many are operating with less purchasing power, less flexibility, and less breathing room than they had just a few years ago. This is not just an economic issue, it is a corporate imbalance that is being absorbed by everyday people. Households today are making more trade-offs than ever, and those trade-offs are no longer just about luxuries or extras. Many people are cutting back on essentials. They are delaying purchases they actually need. They are carrying higher levels of debt just to maintain stability. They are stretching every dollar further than they should have to. In Canada, household debt to income now exceeds 180%. That is not a small signal. That tells us many people are not overspending because they are reckless. They are trying to keep their head above water in an environment where the cost of simply existing has gone up faster than their ability to absorb it. Now take that pressure and place it inside the modern business model. Instead of adapting to consumer strain, many business models multiplied it. The average consumer now manages between 8 and 12 subscriptions. Monthly subscription spending often exceeds $200 to $300. More than 70% of software companies have transitioned to subscription-based models. And over 40% of users forget they even have at least one active subscription. That is important, because what began as convenience has quietly become accumulated financial strain. What used to be a one-time purchase is now a permanent expense. And while each charge may feel small in isolation, together they create a steady drain on already stretched households. And now the market is responding. We are seeing rising cancellation rates across streaming, software, and service platforms. Subscription churn rates have reached roughly 44%, which is near record highs. Consumers are actively auditing recurring charges. Households have reduced subscriptions by roughly 30% or more in a single year, and this is not only happening with poor services. Even high-value services are being cut, not necessarily because they provide no value, although in many cases that is true, but because everything is now competing for the same limited financial capacity. That is what subscription fatigue really is. It is not just annoyance. It is a correction, a consumer response to overreach. At the same time, customers are noticing something else. They are seeing shrinking product sizes through shrinkflation. They are seeing increased pricing without proportional improvement. They are seeing premium offerings that do not actually feel premium. And this creates a dangerous precedent. Value is no longer assumed. It is questioned. Customers are no longer taking businesses at their word. They are evaluating more critically, comparing more aggressively, and trusting less automatically. That is what happens when price rises faster than quality and branding rises faster than substance. But financial pressure does not stay in the financial category. It spills into mental and emotional health. Money is now one of the leading causes of stress across North America. More than 60% of adults report that financial stress is negatively affecting their mental health. That stress is directly linked to sleep disruption, anxiety, depression, burnout, mental fatigue, and emotional exhaustion. So when we talk about inflation, debt, and affordability, we are not just talking about budgets. We are talking about people going to bed worried, people waking up exhausted, people carrying invisible pressure into their homes, their work, and their relationships. And the impact goes even further. Chronic financial stress is associated with increased risk of heart disease and heart attacks, higher blood pressure, greater inflammation, and weakened immune response. Even sleep disruption on its own raises the risk of cardiovascular issues, cognitive decline, and long-term burnout cycles. So people are not just managing their budgets. They are managing uncertainty. They are managing stress responses in their bodies. They are managing the physical cost of prolonged economic pressure. This is why the human element matters so much. Because the consequences are not abstract. They are deeply personal. This leads to a constant state of survival analysis. Every purchase now requires thought. Do I need this? Can I justify this? What do I cancel to afford this? And when you repeat that process across dozens of decisions every month, you create a condition where ordinary spending becomes mentally exhausting. That is not healthy consumer confidence. That is survival analysis at scale. And when people live in that state long enough, they become more cautious, more skeptical, and less responsive to pressure-based selling. At the same time, customers are becoming far more aware. They recognize when they are being upsold. They recognize when urgency is manufactured. They recognize when value is overstated. And their response is not always anger. Often it is withdrawal. They disengage. They stop trusting. They stop responding. Because once customers begin to feel like they are being pushed instead of served, the emotional connection begins to break. That is where the trust gap begins to widen. Trust is visibly eroding, not usually through one major failure, but through many smaller compounding ones. Overpromising, underdelivering, prioritizing revenue over relationships, undervaluing the customer. And once that pattern becomes visible, rebuilding trust becomes extremely difficult. Because marketing cannot repair what behavior keeps damaging. The customer has heard the promises before. They have seen the campaigns before. And if their lived experience does not match the message, trust continues to decline. What is striking is that people are not asking for anything outrageous. Their expectations have not become unreasonable. They have become simple. People want fair, transparent pricing. They want products and services that reasonably last. They want services that deliver what they promise. And they want to feel respected, not managed. That is why bringing back customer excellence matters. Not as a slogan, but as a standard. Because in a fatigued and skeptical market, respect, clarity, and consistency are no longer nice extras. They are part of the value proposition. And this is where the opportunity appears. This moment is not just a challenge for organizations, it is a chance to differentiate. Businesses that prioritize genuine value, communicate honestly, and respect customer realities will not just survive. They will innovate, differentiate, and retain customer loyalty. Why? Because trust stands out in a low-trust environment. Integrity stands out in an over-marketed environment. And substance stands out in a market full of inflated claims. The bar is not being raised by complexity. It is being raised by credibility. So what does it mean to reintroduce the human element? It means designing with empathy, not just efficiency. Pricing with integrity, not just strategy. Selling with honesty, not just persuasion. This is not about lowering standards. It is about raising them in the right areas. Because performance without integrity creates resistance. Growth without value creates fatigue. And business without humanity eventually disconnects from the people it depends on. The landscape has changed. Customers are more aware, more selective, more guarded. So the question is no longer how do we generate more revenue, The better question is, how do we earn their business and keep it? Because in this environment, loyalty is no longer won through pressure, noise, or polished messaging alone. It is earned through honesty, value, consistency, and respect. And that is the real challenge in front of business today, not simply to sell more, but to deserve and earn more.